Hey everyone, I wanted to give my thoughts on gridding or quantizing and click tracks because in modern recordings we're seeing so much of this. I mean, we've obviously seen click tracks for a long time, and click tracks, as far as I can tell, began back in the '80s, and you started having drum machines and quantizing, eventually becoming sort of important. But how does this all affect the music? You can also check out Rick Beato did a really good video on gridding, explaining it. So I would check out his page. He's got some really great content anyway. But how is it making the music sound? And to me, this doesn't mean it's all bad. I don't prefer it. I think a lot of the music sounds robotic and sort of dead, like we've taken the humanity out of it. And so first of all, if you're gridding something, you're taking a performance, and you can kind of mark the exact points of where a note should be in a beat, mathematically. So if you had 16 notes, if you had 4 notes in a beat, you could equally divide that perfectly. Now when humans play, they don't play like that, because the feel, the groove is kind of in between the grid. So if you played 4 16th notes in a beat, and then you take it, and through software, and you grid it. In other words, you take all the notes and you force them to be in place on the grid, so they're exactly in time. Now some people are calling that, like I know Rick had said, we're in the era of being perfect. But only in the sense that that's perfect. I don't think that's perfect. I think it's a mathematical equation, yes. But I mean, if your feel is in between that, how would that really be perfect? To me, it might mean it's wrong. Okay, but we get the point. I just wanted to clarify that. But so we've got this you're moving all the notes onto the grid, and it's not the human performance anymore, because no one plays like that. And especially now, most of the time you don't even have people playing. You just have, the stuff that's programmed, or a keyboard player is playing all the parts. They're playing all the parts, and then they're quantizing it, and gridding it, same thing. So yes, it's going to be a more robotic feel. Now, could there be an instance where that's cool? Absolutely. But I think in a lot of things, for me, it's not good. You're taking the humanity out of it. Art, to me, is humanity. Why would we take that out? Sounds like an error to me. Okay, now you can go into a little bit less of a control, of being controlled with click tracks. So yes, you're putting a click track down that's keeping the tempo of the song steady throughout, and everybody is playing around that click. We're playing at the same tempo, but we can still have some feel within that tempo. You can be behind the click and ahead of the click and so on, and you can still get that human feel. But that still, to me, is actually restrictive. And also in Rick's video, which was really interesting, he was looking at some songs from the '70s where they didn't play to a click track. The band just plays, right? Now, the thing about that is, you'll notice the band will slow down and speed up in certain points of the song, certain sections. I think this is actually important. And I have used the click at times. Years ago, I kind of got rid of all the idea of even using a click. We don't use it, okay? Now, I try to get the rhythm tracks, at least between the band. This would be the bass, drums, and guitar tracked together like a live performance. And at least at that point, what you're getting is the basis has the feel underneath it. That's what you're playing over. And there's going to be shifts in time. In fact, it needs to happen. I'll give you an example. We were doing a song in rehearsal that we were getting ready to record called Maggots and Cotton Candy Clouds. You can check it out if you want. It's on the Musings in 3 Movements CD by my band Nocheez Orchestra. But there's an intro in it, and then the first part has 3 bars of 5, and then a 5/8, and then a bar of 11/8. So we I was noticing while we were playing, we were slowing the 11/8 riff. There's a riff over the 11/8, and we're slowing down. I go, oh, let's keep it. Let's try to keep the tempo there and not slow down. Interestingly enough, we did it, and it didn't sound good. It sounded great slowing it down. So that's the whole idea of an orchestra. It's as if you have a conductor, and he's conducting the music, and you're slowing down here and you're speeding it up. Well, you're learning it that way as a band. You're feeling it together. And that's common. It's easy when you're in the room with people and you're playing and you move together. There's just some connection that happens where you all sway together in time. And that creates, I just think it makes pieces sound more dynamic, more natural. And to me, that is just of utmost importance. I really like doing it that way. Now, there are some problems when you go to, because when you're in the room live with the band and you move together, well, then you record it. And then when you play over it, you're not in the feeling of the moment. You know what I'm saying? So it could slow down here. You've got to get used to that slow down here and there. And some of those, what some would call imperfections. But I think it's still worth doing it that way for me. I just think it's a lot more organic, and it just sounds much better to me. It sounds more emotive, and it's just better in so many different ways. So, am I against always using a click track? No, I think sometimes, and even maybe sometimes there's, you could grid something. What do you want it to sound like? I like the music to sound a little bit on the more organic side, and the human feel, and the emotions that come from slowing down a little and speeding up, because I think that's part of the journey. Just like dynamics is, it is a dynamic, So I think it's very important. And I think maybe we're lacking some of that in a lot of the music today, especially if you have, bands doing things that are supposedly, funky or something like that, right? Well, I don't know. That doesn't sound funky to me. It just sounds stiff. That's what it sounds like. So, yeah, I personally, my choice is to definitely not grid, unless I did some kind of composition maybe where I wanted it to be that way. It's like a very mechanical, like you could make an argument that I'm running a piece for the times, and we're thinking of the machinery of the time, the computer running, you know what I mean? It's like, it's all so perfect, and that would be interesting, right? That's an interesting experiment, and it's representing what you're trying to say with the music. But for me, I really just stay away from no gridding, no click tracks. Just let's learn it together as much as possible. And I know that's hard also for people, because sometimes people just can't get together. COVID's really interesting, right? It's causing some issues that way also. But I would urge people to try, when we can, get out of this mess, or if we're quarantined and we can wear masks, because that's what we're doing too. We're getting back and rehearsing and wearing masks. But to play with people, I mean, that's the big thing, to communicate. I don't think you could never get, by tracking, the same thing you can get through a band learning and communicating together in that moment. Matter of fact, like live, there's things that happen live that can't happen in other situations. It's just not going to happen. Now, that doesn't make, and other things happen in other in tracking situations that you could say are positive too, right? But I mean, even I think soloing too, like I do look at a solo on an album differently than I would live. So I've used different techniques in soloing. Like, sometimes like just playing a solo, like maybe doing 6 or 7 solos. Sometimes you can nail the whole solo and it's fine, But if it's a long solo, sometimes you take sections of each one and let one like guide where the next one goes, right? Because if you pick one to start and you only I like 4 or 5 bars of that one. Okay, where do I go next? Well, the one of the other solos you did has to make sense to going into the next part. So you've chosen a path in a sense. But when you're playing live, it's bouncing back. So if I'm doing a solo and I play something and the drummer or the bass player responds in a certain fashion, then we're all reacting to each other. And then I'm reacting. And now I'm going to do something different. Okay? So that doesn't happen when you're playing a solo over a recorded track, right? Because if I play something, the drums are recorded. He's not responding to me anymore. So I would look at a solo in the studio differently. So these are things to keep in mind when you record, because I do think, obviously, these are all different situations. But again, that's my take on click tracks. I prefer not using them. I just think let's learn the piece and let it flow, the way we think that sounds the best to us and feels the best. So yeah, man, I hope you got. I'd like to hear your opinions. Actually, throw it down below. Let's see what you folks think about it. I mean, how do you feel? What do you do when you record? When you hear music too, and it's not gridded. How do you feel about that? Does it make a difference to you? So all right, folks, over and out. Later.